So that means we can also say a bunch of other things about your mom and everything else. Where does that come from? Stand. And standing equals prayer. Oh, I forgot. Check out the rest of the verse. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, keep alert always on praying. Here's the clue. He's going to say praying as much as he says standing. Right? Then he says this. This is great. Self-sufficient, fiercely independent. Paul says, pray for me whenever I open my mouth. This guy's been to a CR meeting. This guy's celebrating. He's recovering from, brushing his teeth with dynamite and shooting his mouth off all day. Do you pray for your pastor that when I say stuff, really stupid stuff, that either they didn't hear it or I didn't say it? And he goes on, pray for me so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel for which I am the ambassador in chains. Pray, there's the fifth time, that I may declare it fearless. Do you remember that picture? That little baby is doing nothing. It's completely protected by the arms of God, and it's just hanging there, just soaking up God. I'm kind of thinking, and I want to come back to this when I close, but I'm kind of thinking this isn't a sermon to do more. This is a sermon to do less and be with God. Start a 24/7 conversation with God that never quits. We've been through an incredible recession, and in some parts of our county it hasn't given up, and maybe it will never come back. I don't know. But when things get bad, people go out of business, doors close, it's terrible. And there was a sign that was put on a building that needs to be mentioned because of the rest of the sign. But the first part of the sign just said out of business. Boom, out of business. And I went, oh, that's sad. They're out of business. But you had to read the rest of the sign. The rest of the sign said, we didn't even know what our business was. But it's the third part of the sign that's really, really devastating, and it's this. The sign hung on the door of a church. You and I are one bad decision away from being out of business and bankrupt in hopelessness. That's where we sit. The next thing we say. I'm trying to say this morning that do-it-yourself Christianity is not going to stand in the world as we know it. And do-it-yourself church is not going to stand either. Our beliefs and our statement of faith and our notes from all of our board meetings are probably going to stand forever. The question is, will we fall? I know most of you in the room, not all of you tremendously well, but I know a little bit about each of you, and I wouldn't suspect that any of you or myself would ever really doubt Jesus. But what I suspect in my days when I'm really hopeless, and I know that you have those days, is that while I would never doubt Jesus, I would simply neglect to live for Christ. And I would make small compromises that moves Jesus out of the way and Jeff into the central place. That's what happens when churches and Christians go out of business. We find ourselves in a place where we let the toxic stuff take over, and we haven't garnered a life with God full of stillness, quietness, and contentment. a hope that would take us to where God would want us. Lord Jesus, help us to